The Atlanta Braves have had several players with big second halves, but which ones are more believable? I'll answer those questions and many more on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, please stop what you're doing real quick. Hit that subscribe button as we're approaching 15,000 subscribers, and you can help others find us as well. Just hit that thumbs up button on this video. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for all your support there. And on the audio side as well, where we still get the majority of our listeners, you can help out. Just leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Thanks to all my everydayers out there. Today is our weekly mailbag episode. Got about 20 questions that we're going to answer on today's episode. A wide range of questions as always. Thank you to everyone who continues to submit in some fabulous questions. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, also wanted to say thank you to all those who sent some congratulations. Me and my wife out celebrating our 10-year anniversary this past week and had a great trip down to Jamaica. Had a fantastic time there. So appreciate all the congratulations, well wishes there. Thank you so much for bearing with me as I was out all of this week. Had a great time down there. Great trip. Was good to get away for a little bit. No time with the kids. The longest we'd ever been away from our kids. So it was really relaxing time together. Really enjoyed it. Great trip. Got to meet some fantastic people there as well. Got to meet Steve and Sonia, who are unfortunately Alabama fans, but hey, they might now be subscribers to Locked On Braves. Sonia said she checked it out. Hopefully she hit that subscribe button like you need to do. Also met Paul, who saw the Locked On shirt I was wearing, and he is a everyday listener for Locked On Red Wings. Saw a couple of people there actually wearing some Braves gear that weren't too embarrassed to do so. So a great time. Got to meet some great people and get away. Hope you all had a fantastic week as well. But we are back here and we are ready to end the season strong. We got a month left in the regular season, and then we are going to get after it in the offseason. Should be a very entertaining and interesting offseason for the Atlanta Braves. And I'm sure we'll get into some of that on today's podcast, which is our weekly mailbag episode. So let's jump into the questions. Got 21 of them to get to. A couple here from Joey, who says, if Arizona makes Ketel Marte available, would you trade Cam Caminiti, Nacho, and Blake Burkhalter for him? If they wanted Ozzie instead, would you include him? It looks like outfield is set for us, and a shortstop upgrade is tough. Marte seems like the clearest way for us to improve on offense. And before I get into your questions, also, yes, I got the gift that always seems to be given to you at the end of the vacation. I've got some sort of illness, so that's why I sound like I'm underwater. So I apologize for that. But to answer Joey's first question here, would I trade Cam Caminiti, Nacho, and Blake Burkhalter for Ketel Marte? Yes. In a heartbeat, quite honestly, I would do that trade without much hesitation at all. I mean, Ketel Marte is probably the best second baseman in baseball. I don't even know there's much of a question about that, and has been for several years now. Switch hitter, homer, power, speed. I mean, he's a whole package. So yeah, I would do that. I think that is a huge upgrade. Would I include Ozzie in the deal? Yeah, I would. I mean, again, getting somebody like Ketel Marte is a huge upgrade to your team. You're talking about putting down another all-star type of player, maybe the best player at his position, at his respective position at second base. Now he is 31. He's under contract for a while, but even, what he's getting paid isn't ridiculous. It's not above anything that I don't think AA would feel uncomfortable doing. But you look at the last 3 seasons for Ketel Marte, 4.3 F4, 6.3 F4. He's already at 4.3 this year, probably going to end up somewhere around 5 once again. He had a 6.3 F4 season in 2019. Had some injured seasons in there. 2020 obviously had a shortened season too, but only played 45 games of that 60-game season. 2021 only played 90 games. Even in 2022, played 137 games. So there has been some injury history for Ketel Marte, but when healthy, he's been amazing. So the only thing that really would bring me much hesitation is that he is 31, turns 32 this October, and he's under contract for a little bit. But again, the money's not terrible. But you're talking about getting, like I said, the best second baseman in baseball and one of the best bats in baseball, an all-star player. I absolutely trade Caminiti, who I think is good, but I think his ceiling is probably mid-rotation. Nacho, who's probably a super utility, and Blake Burkhalter, who's probably either a fourth or fifth starter or a really good bullpen arm. And look, if you're getting Marte, what is the role for Ozzie? So, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to move him in that deal too, because Marte's better than Ozzie. You're making a big upgrade at second base. Another one from Joey. If Atlanta is going to make a splash trade for a shortstop, who is untradeable in your opinion, and who are realistic candidates that could be moved? So I think I touched on this a little bit, maybe last week, but it might have been last week's mailbag. There's nobody in this system for me that is untradeable, that is untouchable in the right deal. And if I'm able to make a splash for a shortstop of not just now, but for the future, I'm willing to trade pretty much anybody in the system. I mean, I just told you I'm ready to trade Cam Caminiti for Ketel Marte. Caminiti considered by most to be the top prospect in the system. So, yeah, I don't think there's anybody that's really untouchable in the right move. I told you last offseason I'd be willing to trade Drake Baldwin for Garrett Crochet, just because I think Garrett Crochet could be one of the best pitchers in baseball for a long time. And I might be true about that part, but I'm also still glad we have Drake Baldwin. I mean, you got to give up something to get something. And we've been looking for that future shortstop for a while. So if it costs us our top prospect, I think I'm willing to pay that cost. So there's nobody for me that is untouchable, untradeable, but you got to be getting back a really good return. Like I said, the only reason I was willing to do that for Garrett Crochet is because I was a big believer that he was going to be one of the top pitchers in baseball for a while, as long as he stays healthy. And you never know what that looks like for starting pitchers. But yes, for me, there's nobody who's really untradeable. There are several players in the system I like that I would like to keep around, but there's nobody for me that is completely untouchable. And then last one from Joey, who says, with Harris, Albies, and Waldrop all having second half surges, who do you believe the change is real? Who would you want to count on in 26 out of those three? So great question here. Title of the episode. You got Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies, Hurst, and Waldrop, all having really good second halves. I get Ozzie's having a better second half. Ozzie's second half does look more like Ozzie. I mean, it's a 750 OPS, 260 average, 320 on base. That's more like Ozzie that we're used to. So he has looked more like himself. It's not like he's been unbelievable. He's been kind of the Ozzie that you expect in the second half. It's not like he's gone beyond and above like Michael Harris has. Michael Harris has gone above and beyond to try to make up for a disappointing first half. Ozzie's just kind of looked like what Ozzie's numbers typically look like at the end. And so it's hard, I guess, to answer the question. Ozzie is the one that I believe the change in the least, because Ozzie is known to go on these big hot streaks. And maybe we're just seeing a little bit of a hot streak right now for Ozzie. But he also goes on really long cold streaks. So I'd say Ozzie is the one that I trust the least for the changes. And then I would probably say Harris, and then I would say Waldrop. And the only reason I say Harris, and we did a whole episode on this, we did a whole episode on both Harris and Hurst and Waldrop. I believe there's been levels of changes for all three of these players as to why they're doing better now in the second half than they were in the first half. But as I talked about in the Michael Harris episode, the only reason I'm hesitant to completely buy into the changes is because he's had second halves like this before. He's had huge second halves after disappointing first halves and then not followed it up the next year. There have been some big mechanical changes to Michael Harris to give you hope that this does go into 2026. So I'm somewhat optimistic, but I'm still holding some reservation. For Waldrop, there's been obvious changes to his pitch repertoire, to his mechanics, to why he's seeing better results. But as I talked about on the Waldrop episode where we dissected his changes, it's not that I think he's going to be a sub-1 ERA type of pitcher. I don't even think he's necessarily going to be a top-of-the-rotation pitcher, but I think the changes he has made will allow him to be a big league pitcher. And so I buy into Hurst and Waldrop and to the changes that he's made and what we've seen in the second half are going to lead to him being a big league pitcher. I would just pull back expectations that he's going to be a top of the rotation arm with, the way that, which is what he's looked like so far. So I believe in Albies the least, Harris second, and Waldrop the most, but I remain optimistic about Harris and both Waldrop going into next year that they can be those guys. All right, that was the Joey Milby section of the podcast. Next, I'll get into a lot more of your questions on the Atlanta Braves. We'll get into the rest of those questions here next. Hey, Locked On Braves fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true as well, but it's totally legit. I know many people that use it. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commute. And you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code SEASON for a limited time 25% per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. We've also put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. So look at that. I mean, you can get money back for gas, money back for doing a survey. Plenty of ways out there for you to get free money. Check it out. And thank you for checking out Locked On Braves, making us your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. Let's jump back into the questions here. Next one from Jason Watson, who says, thoughts on taking a flyer on Andrew Heaney? He could be that starting pitcher addition that we will need next year. So I don't know if it's Andrew Heaney specifically, but an Andrew Heaney type is really what I'm looking for. I said this last offseason, it didn't happen, but I'm going to say it again a lot this offseason. I don't need a top of the rotation arm. It would be great. You want to give it to me. I need depth in the starting rotation. It takes 10, 11, 12, 13 guys to get through a regular season. And instead of having to count on Cal Quantrill and Bryce Elder and Carlos Carrasco, and I know these are extreme situations where you've lost your entire rotation, and that's not necessarily the norm, but you got to expect you're going to lose 2 to 3 pitchers throughout a year. And it would be nice to have some veterans like Jose Quintana, Andrew Heaney, guys like that who aren't going to cost you a lot, but they provide you valuable depth. So again, whether or not it's Andrew Heaney, we'll talk about more when we get to the offseason. But yes, they definitely need to add guys like that to give them depth. If they have to go to a 6-man rotation, let's say everybody just happens to be healthy at the same time and you got too many cooks in the kitchen, so be it. You go to a 6-man rotation for a time or two if you have to, but you're going to need more arms like that to get you through a season. Caleb Cook, do you see any scenario where Profar plays in the infield next season, or is the starting DH? So I do see a scenario where Profar plays some second base next year. If they were to move on from Ozzie, Profar could play second base. It's been a while, and when he last played there, he wasn't good. But I could see a scenario where if outfield is your best chance at making a huge, because like I've said, I think the Braves are going to make one big splash offensively this offseason. And if it just happens to come in the outfield, because we know Alex, he's just going to take the best deal wherever their position, you figure that out, you let Snit figure that out. If that were to happen and outfield is the best place to upgrade offensively, then I think there is a scenario where you have to move Profar around and give him starts in left as well as DH and second base and kind of move him in different spots to get his bat in the lineup. So I could see a scenario where that does happen. I don't know that it's likely, but I could see a scenario where that is the case. Whit Price, I know it won't happen, but let's have some fun. What would a trade package for Bobby Witt look like? I think it'd probably start with Michael Harris and Hurston Waldrop. Michael Harris, Hurston Waldrop, and maybe one of your top pitching prospects. Maybe gets it done. I mean, Bobby Witt's locked up for a long time. I know we're just having some fun here, but I think it would probably have to look something like that. You'd have to give up you'd have to give a couple of young major league talents and some of your best prospects. But again, not including Acuna in the package. I mean, you could include Acuna in there, and maybe it works out. But I'm assuming we're trying to keep Acuna. Then maybe you could do Michael Harris, Hurston Waldrop, Cam Caminiti, J.R. Ritchie, maybe something like that for Bobby Witt Jr., who's I think the best shortstop in baseball. Anthony Del Sandro, would it be more beneficial to extend Acuna before the CBA expires or after? I'm going to say before, not necessarily because of anything in the CBA, but just because signing players earlier to future money is always better than signing players later to that money, that times money, if that makes any sense. I mean, the value always goes up. That's why you have these, deferrals and all of that. So you sign them now, you're paying what the dollar is worth today instead of what the dollar is worth then. And if you're not extending them until after the CBA, it's just later. And so the dollar is worth more then. So it's always going to be beneficial to extend a player as early as you possibly can. Calvin Finner, thoughts on Jordan, and not to brush aside what I think your ultimate question is. We don't know what's going to happen in the CBA. There could be a lockout. It might be more to your point. It might be more beneficial to wait till after, because if there is a lockout and there's no season, that's another year you're missing of Cunha. Obviously, they're not having to pay him that year, but it's another season of Acuna still in his good years, in his prime years, that you're missing. So to that extent, it might be better to wait. To kind of answer both sides of the question of maybe why you would wait. Calvin Finner, thoughts on Jordan Montgomery as a one-year bounce-back candidate for 2026? He would be recovered from Tommy John surgery by then. What would your ideal rotation be? Who's added to the bullpen? So I'm not going to get into those second questions now. We'll talk more about that once we get to the offseason. But as far as Jordan Montgomery as a one-year bounce-back, yeah. I mean, obviously, it depends on the deal. We all thought about that about Walker Buehler last year. He signs for $21 million, and now the Red Sox just cut him. Which look for the notification that he's joined the Braves here at any moment. But it depends on the price, because this time last year I thought you could get Walker Buehler at 1 year $12 million, 1 year $15 million. He went for 1 year $21 million. So I don't think anybody's going to be willing to go that high on Jordan Montgomery, who's pretty much been a no-show for the last 2 years now. But I wouldn't hate it for a guy like Jordan Montgomery that I liked when he was a free agent. I thought he could be that stabilizer in your rotation. It just has not been the case. So again, always dependent on price, but I don't hate the idea of that. Dustin Mounts, with Ronaldo Lopez coming off a lost season, how many innings can we expect him to pitch next year if he does make the rotation? Good question. Shoulder issues scare me even more than elbows. I mean, 140. I think probably max is what you would hope for Ronaldo Lopez next year. But I mean, it's definitely not going to be a 32 start type of, Ronaldo Lopez. Like I alluded to earlier, I hope they go out and just sign a couple of starting pitchers and go with the 6-man rotation and try to keep these guys as fresh as possible. You look at 2024, he only threw 135 innings. So 140 might even be pushing it. So maybe somewhere 125, 140 innings next year for Ronaldo Lopez. I think that's probably the high mark. Jason Watson, I don't think Joey Wentz has any minor league options left. He doesn't. What do you think the plan will be for next season? I think it depends on the offseason and what all they bring in. If they're able to bring in some Andrew Heaney, Jose Quintana, Jordan Montgomery types as depth, and they feel like that depth is better than what Joey Wentz offers, then they're going to have to move him off the 40-man roster and risk losing him. So it just depends on what they do. I think they would ideally you sign some great starting pitchers that you really don't even worry about Joey Wentz. But I think if he is to stick around, it is going to be a situation where he gets to spring training, somebody gets injured, and he starts the year in the rotation. And then the moment, he either waivers, is not good, or somebody comes back, that they have to DFA him at that point. I think that's the most likely scenario for Joey Wentz to stick around. Matthew Hoffman, when the Braves were dominant, we had a stable bullpen with Kenley, Johnson, Bummer, and Lee, the only ones for sure on the team next year. What 3 realistic acquisitions would you want for the bullpen next year? Lara, Harris, Burkhalter, and the AAA bum squad can be depth. So, I mean, I do think Lara and Harris specifically, the transition for Lara, we'll talk about more next week on Miners Monday, but the transition for Lara back to starter has not gone great. I think they need to put him back as a reliever, and he can be a big reliever for him next year. You didn't mention Daysville here, but I think Daysville is going to be part of that. So, Kenley, Johnson, Bummer, Lee, Daysville, Lara, maybe Hayden Harris. But as far as, relievers, I'd like to see them go after. I think there's lots of them out there that you could potentially go after, but I'll give you 3. Bring Iggy back. I feel confident enough in him and bringing him back on a 1-year deal. I think there's another question about that, so I'll wait for that. Phil Maton, a guy that I've wanted all season. I think he's a really good setup guy. Gregory Soto from the left side. I mean, those are 3 I don't think any of those are going to cost you too much, but that's 3, really good back-end type of arms. Lefties are hitting just 173 against Soto. When he can throw enough strikes and you use him correctly in the right situations, I think he can be a really good reliever, throws hard. But you add those three with what you already have in Johnson, and Joe Jimenez coming back too, possibly either a Lopez or a Holmes going to the bullpen. I think that could be a really, really good bullpen for the Atlanta Braves. Zach says, it's looking like we have a solid rotation for next season, but with all of our pitching staff injuries both of the last 2 years, do you think the Braves should follow the Dodgers model and stack up arms this offseason? Is there a high-end starter you think we should go after? So Braves won't be able to do it to the Dodgers degree in terms of signing Yamamoto, signing Blake Snell. They're not going to be, at least I don't think, we'll see. I don't think they're going to be targeting any of the high-end starters this offseason, but as I alluded to earlier, I do think they absolutely need to just stack up on some depth in the rotation. Even if it means you have to go to a 6-man rotation, even if it means that a Hurston Waldrop has to be optioned down to begin the year to make room, I think you need to go out and find one or two starting pitchers this offseason, veteran starters to give you depth. So I absolutely think they need to go that route. I just don't think it won't be the high-end version like we've seen the Dodgers do. All right, got several more questions left to get to on today's episode. We'll get into the rest of them here next. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your phone or your laptop. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Do you have subscriptions that you forgot you're paying for, like I had last week? I linked all my accounts to Monarch Money and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those alone saved me money every month. And it also helps when you're budgeting with a couple independent goals. Monarch Money makes it simple to review finances with your partner. You can see both budgets, goals, and spending activity in one place. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONMLB. Let's jump back into the questions because still got several to get to. AAWX says, every year it seems we have that one prospect that comes through and makes noise when they get called up to Atlanta, but we continue to have one of the lowest rated farms in the league. Is this a product of amazing player development, or does the MLB underrate our prospects? So the easy answer here is that it's both. Now, I read Kylie McDaniels. He put out his farm report last week or the week before that, and I think he had the Braves ranked 26th, which was up one spot. Now, he did say in his report that the Braves have a lot of interesting prospects at the lower levels, and they're likely to move up the rankings in the coming years. But I do think it's both. It's also the Braves move their prospects through so quickly. They don't have time to really get on some of these prospect lists and grow that hype because of where they are, or at least should be, in their winning curve. Hurston Waldrop's throwing the ball well. They need a pitcher. Let's just call him up. AJ Smith-Shawver's throwing the ball well. Who cares if he's 20? Let's call him up. We got an injury to Riley or Ozzie. Let's call up Nacho Alvarez. He's the best we got in the minors. Who cares if he's 20 years old and not ready? There's been a lot of that. And sometimes, like for a Nacho who was gaining some top 100 traction, you call him up before he's ready. He stumbles. You could say the same for Hurston Waldrop, who fell off a lot of top 100 prospect lists. You call them up too early, they stumble at the major leagues. That takes a lot of shine off of these guys. And so that hurts their prospect value. So that plays into it as well. But part of it is it's amazing player development, and the Braves know who to target. They know some things that they see with these players that they can change to get them where they need to be. And it's also just a lot of these guys are being underrated nationally. I talked about this, again, forgive me with the vacation. I believe it was last Monday's episode where we talked about the next top 100 prospect. I talked about on there how the Braves are always undervalued by the national media and how you can't depend on national media to tell you who the best prospects are. You want that? Listen to your local hosts, your local bloggers, your local YouTubers. They're going to be more in the know about your team's favorite prospects than the national writers are. Now, the national writers are going to give you good tidbits because they're talking to scouts and they can give that information. But there are people who are dedicated to watching Braves prospects each and every day that are going to be able to tell you more about the Braves farm system. And when they tell you, I'm excited about this guy and nobody else is talking about him, be excited. I've benefited from that a lot, listening to, Peach State prospects out there and guys like that, Battery Power. They do a great job of covering Braves minor leaguers. And I've benefited from that in some of my dynasty leagues, picking up some of these guys like a young Carlos Lara early before anybody was ever talking about him on a national level. So that is part of the problem. And that's not just with the Braves. I mean, I think that's with every system. Every local, YouTuber, blogger is going to know more about their prospects than the national medias, or most of them are anyway. So, but I do think it's partially the Braves moves players up so fast. They don't have time to gain that prospect traction. And even when some of them do, like a Hurston Waldrop and a Nacho Alvarez, they get called up too quickly and they struggle, and it takes off some of that shine. So I think that all plays into it. PJ's Braves, how badly has Drake Baldwin's Rookie of the Year chances been impacted by Snickers lineup decisions? Probably not as much as we want to say. I know we all want to be angry and upset that Drake's not out there more, and I think that's certainly warranted, but Drake's got to perform. And part of it is just that Cade Horton's been amazing for a team that's, in a postseason contention, in a postseason race. Isaac Collins has been fantastic for a team that's, atop their division, and that's going to get more attention. And so I think that probably has more to do with it than Drake Baldwin not playing an extra 2 or 3 games here or there. Another one from PJ's Braves. If the team decides to re-sign Iglesias, what would you want the contract terms to be? I mean, I would want them to be like 1 year, $8 million. It's probably more likely going to have to be 1 year, $12 million with a $10 million team option and maybe a $2 million buyout. And I think I'd be okay with that. I mean, he's making $16 million now. He obviously needs to make less than that. So 1 year, $12 million with a team option and a $2 million buyout, I think could be probably the right deal for Iglesias. Matt McGuire, Jake, hope you had a great time on your anniversary trip. Thank you so much, Mac. Who is one legacy Brave that you would bring back to fix this team as a player? Chipper plays third. Always good questions like this, and I always just go based on what's needed right now. Probably be controversial, but 2023 Dansby Swanson, I think that was his last year here. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. It's probably what this team needs, just because of his, veteran leadership. Also, it was just his best year offensively and defensively. You give me that season and put him at shortstop for this Braves team, I think that could do wonders, because I think you're pretty much fine, assuming everybody's healthy. I mean, assuming the rotation is healthy, everything there is fine. You can fix the bullpen and the offseason, making some minor moves like I talked about. I think the outfield is okay. Certainly, can use a second baseman, but Ozzy's your best second baseman in franchise history. So, I mean, I know that not where he is right now, but I think shortstop still is the biggest area of need. And so you could maybe look back at a Rafael Furcal year, maybe one of his best years, maybe an Anderson Simmons best year, something like that. But I still think I would just look back. I mean, obviously, if I can just take Hank Aaron, put him in left field, take Chipper Jones, put him in left field or third base, something like that. But I'm just looking at the team's biggest area of need and taking, one of the best years we've had at that position and saying Dansby. So yeah, I think that's probably what it would be. And again, that's probably a bit controversial, because anytime you get a question like this, you're going to want to take back a Hank Aaron, a Chipper Jones, a Dale Murphy, one of those guys. And yeah, I would love to do that. But just based on need, I'd probably take Dansby's 2023 season. Dustin Mounts, with everyone coming off the 60-day IL at the end of the season and prospects needing be protected from the Rule 5 draft, what prospects do you see needing protected that are eligible? How do you make room on the roster? So kind of running out of time, so I'm going to have to squeeze this one in here, and this one probably needs to be a little bit longer, and we will go over this more once we get to the offseason. But there are plenty of guys that can be taken off the 40-man roster. You do have at least 5 guys on the 60-day IL that are going to have to come back at the end of season, which means you're going to have to make room for them on the roster. But Cox, Dunning, Quantrill, Seabold, Stratton, Suero, Wiles, that's just 7 pitchers right there that can go off the 40-man at any moment. Ozuna and Iggy will be free agents. And then you got Bruhan, Orneas, Kelnick, maybe even Carlos Rodriguez. Not that, I'd want to be last, but that's 13 spots you could potentially open up. So I think there's going to be plenty of room to open up spots. Players who need to be protected: Hayden Harris, David McCabe, Blake Burkhalter, and Carlos Lara are probably locks to get protected. Embior Tavares is eligible but doesn't need to be protected. Adam Mayer is eligible that I would like to keep, but probably doesn't need to be protected. Ian Mejia might actually get picked up in the Rule 5 draft, but I don't think they'll protect him. And Landon Harper's another one. Had a good year. I don't think he'll get protected, but he is eligible for that. A couple more here. Another one from Dustin, who says, besides Sell and Albies at the end of the season, are there any other players the Braves need to pick up or decline a team option? So there's a $7 million team option for Pierce Johnson and a $5 million team option for Kenley. So both of those are likely to get picked up. I think Ozzy's is picked up, and obviously Chris Sales. So I think they'll pick up all of those options. Justin Shoemake, since this is a lost season, why are we not seeing J.R. Ritchie or Hayden Harris yet in the big leagues? They are our future. I'd rather see what they can do and keep sending these nobodies out there to eat innings. And then Mike Brooks also said, do you think we see Hayden Harris? Did he get a look? I've heard Braves don't like his analytics, which evidently is more important than results. So Hayden Harris is one of those guys, and I'll just admit, even just not even looking at analytics, just watching him pitch, it doesn't make sense. He doesn't throw very hard. It doesn't really seem like his pitches are moving all that much, but to Mike's point, he gets results. And I don't know, I'll say this. I think at this point for both J.R. Ritchie and Hayden Harris, while I mentioned all of those players that you could immediately just ship off the 40-man roster and nobody would lose sleep, that's after the season. Right now, you do kind of need those guys to get through the year. And I think that's part of why, at least for Hayden Harris, we know they're going to have to add him to protect him from the Rule 5 draft this upcoming offseason. I think it is just about holding on to those 40-man spots that you have right now to get through the rest of this year. I'd still be a little surprised if we don't see Hayden Harris at least get a look at some point this season. But I think it's probably just those valuable 40-man spots right now that is the only reason why those guys haven't debuted yet. For J.R. Ritchie, I think he's probably at his innings limit, and they're probably just working on some stuff at AAA. Still, they haven't shut him down yet, and he's throwing. Last outing was really good, but I still think they're just wanting to hold on to those 40-man spots for now. It's the only thing that really makes sense. Cameron Clements said, and that's, I'm not even saying that necessarily makes sense, but it's the only reason that I can think of why those guys haven't been given an opportunity. Cameron Clements says, do you think A will have another bad offseason, or will he actually sign some people? So I think he's going to have a great offseason. And I think this is the offseason that is going to dictate his future with this team. Now, as glowing as I've been on AA in the past, and I do still think he's a great GM, it has been a couple of questionable offseasons. How much is that is his fault, and how much is that is him, trying to make moves with one hand tied behind his back? We don't really know. But it seems like all reins will be off this offseason. And so this is the one where I think you can really evaluate AA when there's no constraints on him, or at least, not as many as he's had, at least this past offseason. I think this is going to be the offseason for AA that's really going to determine not just the future of this club, but also his future with this team. So I expect him to have a big offseason. All right, thanks so much for joining me here today, Mass Boost, Misty. Appreciate y'all joining me here live, AA as well. Appreciate y'all joining Scott Bingham, Live S, Antonio Lopez. Appreciate y'all joining me on today's live episode. Make sure you subscribe if you hadn't. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Me and Lindsay will be back on the postcast tonight as the Braves hopefully not give up 20 runs to the Phillies this time. We'll talk about it more on tonight's postcast. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get the Locked On Braves podcast, and we will talk to you next.